Thank you for joining us one more time. I'm here with Dr. Collins once more, and we're here to engage in another episode of Time to Talk, Tea Time, 5T. Dr. Collins, thank you for joining us once more.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Today, we will go into our continuation of our episodes, and as we about to engage in that, please introduce us to your teapot, the story behind it, and then we'll get into our podcast.
Okay. Welcome everybody to Tea Time. And I'm engaging my talks around tea because not only do I think teas are so healthy and good for you, but I happen to collect teapots. And the particular one that I'm using today is from a town called Moustier, which I may not be pronouncing exactly right, but it's a beautiful small town in Provence in France. And this was a handcrafted pot of poppies that I received there. And for those of you who are into tea, I am drinking a tea that is perfect for bedtime or anytime you're trying to relax or settle down. And this tea has some chamomile, a little bit of mint in it, and also some orange rinds, and then a little bit of turmeric added for as an anti-inflammatory. So we'll talk a little bit more about nutrition today as well on the topic that we've chosen today. So I hope you grabbed your tea and you're joining me for some tea while we sit and have a nice conversation. Thank you.
Dr. Collins, we will be asking you about the current situation of COVID-19, and we want to get into asking you about coping skills, the psychology of it, and probably we get into some nutrition of how people should be going about and coping. You can start with any agenda you wish to tackle first, whether it be psychology or nutrition.
Okay. Well, with COVID-19, the thing that I've been noticing is, and I should explain that most of my time is spent speaking with, counseling patients who have either a GI disorder with some psychological component or oncology patients, cancer patients. And of course, for the last easily 8 weeks, the topic that really has been most prominent on most of my patients and clients' mind has been the quarantine or the virus or, that compounding the issues that they have around, for example, their cancer diagnosis. So it's been very interesting to me to see not only how the virus is just an added stressor, I mean, that is for everyone, but how it actually has taken a prominent role, which makes sense because it's more of an acute issue at this time for most people, but also how some of the principles that we would employ in coping with a diagnosis are the same as those in coping with the virus. And here's what I mean. For example, just take the idea of challenge. Seeing a new diagnosis, seeing an issue like the virus and how it's affecting our lives on every level, biological, social, financial, even spiritual for many people, that actually is a great way to be resilient and to overcome what you're going through. So to first see it as a challenge. And how do we do that? Well, it's not easy. For example, with both getting a cancer diagnosis as well as dealing with the virus, you have first information that's not consistent. And we've seen that. It's not that I'm pointing fingers at any particular person or body of people, but naturally when something is first being learned about, information comes out pretty rapid, and then it gets disseminated on a lot of different levels, and you might hear information that's conflicting. The same thing happens sometimes with the diagnosis of an illness, like even a cancer diagnosis. You might hear information which then isn't complete, and you get what seems like conflicting or different information within a week or two down the road. Maybe different doctors say different things. Maybe family members or friends who have gone through cancer give you different facts as they know it. You might even start reading up on your diagnosis and find conflicting information. So that's one of the first challenges that a lot of people have with a diagnosis. And I'm hearing my patients go through that same process as they're talking about COVID-19. In other words, they're first on an information gathering quest. What's the information? What are the facts? What do I know to be true? What do I need to know? And then how can I prepare myself to take some kind of action? So that would be the first parallel that I would draw between COVID-19 and, for example, a cancer
One of
diagnosis.
the questions that's floating around there, we're not getting a lot of consistency on this. You did some research in the past, did you not?
Yes, I did.
Um, Enlighten us on the process of a vaccine. It might not be your expertise, but the knowledge base that you have of the process of it, standard time of a proper vaccine coming out, just so that whoever come across this can have an idea of what is fact, what is fiction.
Well, the development of a vaccine is a very complicated process in many ways. And no, it's not my field of expertise, but I do find that there's a lot of misconception amongst the public, about exactly what a vaccine is. I think most people are familiar with their early infant and toddlerhood vaccines. They're familiar with that, and they know those to probably give them some sort of protection for the rest of their lives. For example, think of polio or maybe measles vaccines, chicken pox, things like that. After that, maybe if you travel, some people realize they're occasionally asked to get an additional vaccine to give them more immediate protection against something. But I don't think that anyone, unless they were in science, would know the long process it takes behind the scenes to find the vaccine for a virus that you have at hand. First, you need to know a lot about the components and the properties of that virus. And then it takes a lot of studies that also require what we call in science replication from other labs, other scientists to show that what you found true in your lab was also found true in other settings. After that, just devising a vaccine that you're sure doesn't have some other unfortunate side effects is the next step. So you have to actually begin to use that vaccine in settings first, perhaps with an animal model, but then with with the population as well, and be ready to deal with any side effects that might occur. So that's why that's just actually just a couple of the reasons why developing a vaccine can take a really long time.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. Um, the psychology of your field that you in oncology and the COVID and how people cope, how they are coping, as well as the magnitude of it all. Is there any contrasts that you're seeing from your patients of a COVID and how someone would take the diagnosis of cancer?
Absolutely. So the first starting point of seeing it as a challenge, as I had spoken about a minute ago, seems to me to be something that is almost inherent in some people, that you can learn to begin to see things that are upsetting or things that are dangerous as a challenge. But that seems to be almost something that's a personality feature, or previous challenges, allow a person to be ready to see something as a challenge rather than to immediately feel overcome by it. But I think one of the next things after finding that you're being presented with information that could be conflicting is that there's a lot of uncertainty. So after getting at least the information that you can, garnering some facts, garnering some preparation, after that, there's a lot of trust required in your information sources. So, people will begin to rely on a particular doctor or a particular organization, or maybe a particular newscaster, or even a particular source of news for their information. Then they also have people in their own life that they trust, whether it's family or friends or other professionals that they begin to trust. But I'm hearing a lot of my patients who have a general mistrust for the media, a mistrust for information that's coming from a variety of sources. And it's really difficult for them to settle in on where and what to believe, which often brings them, in my mind, I'm starting to see what I will call sort of a dichotomy in their response. It's like dichotomy would be that A lot of people tend to go outward. They tend to actually go out to more social relationships. They tend to soothe themselves or cope with what they're dealing with by going to even more sources of information or trying to verify what they've heard. So they're seeking outward, sources of consolation, basically, or they tend to go inward. They tend to get more hibernating, which right now is easy to do because you're almost forced to have a little less social contact. And they start to do more contemplating, more conjuring up memories. They go inward on their own thinking and their feelings, and their world gets smaller. Now, either of those directions can have positives or negatives. The positive thing about going outward is that it does help you to have social contact, to feel connected to the world, to have some sort of an affiliation with others, and even a confirmation of the things that you're feeling. So maybe you'd have to do that by Skype or Zoom or FaceTime, or going out and doing certain kinds of social things, but with social distancing. Like I've, known of people to have a couple of friends over, but we all sat 10 feet apart, something like that. Going inward is possibly a positive thing as well, because some people do need more time with their own thoughts, their own personal growth. I have seen so many patients now actually going over old grief that was unfinished, memories that they hadn't truly come to terms with, reaching out to people who they had a lot of internal stories and identification with, taking up new hobbies that are quiet time, more meditating, playing musical instruments. There's a lot of internal type of work that can be done in that direction. So going outward, going inward, both have their positive qualities in helping people cope.
From what you've been hearing, the symptoms of COVID, um, can you give us any enlightenments in how one should be eating right now? Things that we should be stacking up on in our diet, and so on and forth.
Definitely. So it's really interesting because when you're able to see a problem, let's call it a problem, as a challenge, that's part of adaptation. That is one way to adapt to the changes in our world so that we can successfully achieve a better outcome for ourselves and overcome what's in front of us. And one of the ways to do that is to take control where you can. In one area where we can take a lot of control is in our nutritional health. And I do understand that right now, not only has some of the cost of food gone up, which is very unfortunate, but even what's available has changed for many people, depending on where you live. But even with what's at our hands, we can begin to focus on those foods that are really important for sustaining, for example, our immune system. There's no better time than now to make sure you eat a good variety, for example. Variety itself, meaning food sources that are at least a few different vegetables, a few different colors of vegetable, a few different fruits, a few different types of grain, a few different protein sources. That's what I mean by variety. When you have variety in your diet, you actually are making sure or ensuring to a greater degree that you're getting all the different nutrients you need. Vitamins and minerals are paramount to sustaining your immune system, and so is protein. In fact, protein is absolutely critical for actually making antibodies, something that we've heard a lot about on the news lately. An antibody is partially made of your protein sources. So when you eat your protein from your food, it goes into sort of like, consider it like a storage bin in your body, and you pull from that storage to make all the different proteins of your body. And one of those very important ones is your antibodies. So right now, making sure that you get the right amount of protein, high quality protein, and then a really good variety on your fruits and vegetables is super important. And just let me go a little more detailed in that. Fruits and vegetables is one thing, but why? I think it's really important to understand even just a little bit more of the biochemistry there. When we're looking at a fruit or a vegetable, we're looking sometimes at color. Think of green peppers, red peppers, yellow peppers, and also orange, all the colors of your bell peppers, for example. Those colors are pigments. The pigment is a chemical. Those chemicals are actually antioxidants. So you actually want to have a variety in the color which is the actual chemical that is like a nutrient for your system. Vitamin A is a carotenoid. Vitamin A is a color. And vitamin E is an extremely important anti-inflammatory. Vitamin C is as well. You can get vitamin C from, of course, citrus, but you also get that from the potato. You get that from a lot of other sources. So a really good variety in the diet is super important. Then things like tea, things that don't have to be in the diet, but could enhance your diet. So teas that have turmeric, teas that have some mint in them, having plenty of zinc in your diet, which also comes from a variety of grains and other foods. And all of that is very important. And a lot of people are asking me, should I take a supplement? Should I go out and buy a multivitamin with minerals, or should I take, additional dietary supplements? It's not really a must. It's something that you can get in your diet if you're good at that, if you're good at variety and you have the appetite and you're actually eating a lot of fresh food as well. But if you feel like your diet is inadequate, or you're not really able to get what you need right now, it would be fine to take a supplement, for example, of zinc or vitamin C, that wouldn't be harmful. But be very careful not to megadose. Number one, it may not even be beneficial to you. And number two, it could be costly or harmful. So you want to be really careful about the values. And I could give out some general values. I don't mind doing that, but I really would like to encourage everyone to please seek a registered dietitian. Every state has registered dietitians. They're already certified at a national level. You can even call the national level, the Academy for Nutritionists and Dietitians, and find out who's in your area. But talk to a dietitian. The reason I say that is that dietitian can not only figure out for your age, your gender, your height and weight exactly what levels you need of these nutrients, but then they can do like what I do with patients. I take how that person likes to eat. I individualize any of my recommendations according to the foods they already like, they're accustomed to eating, what they can afford. There's no reason for me to just hand somebody a generic diet. I take the way they eat, and then I might tweak it, suggest a few additional things or change a few other items, or maybe even move around when they eat what. But that way I can individualize all of the recommendations according to their style, to their lifestyle.
Fabulous. Is there any such thing as preventative eating? And I'll explain that a little bit. It's not to say one eat and it's a cure, but eating right, building up your system and giving yourself the best shot. So we're talking about preventive eating and not getting behind the eight ball. Because if one gets sick, of course you can start to eat right and enhance your situation. But is there such a thing as a preventative eating? So let's say we have COVID happening right now, and one probably say, you know what, I was eating poorly. Is there any such thing as preventive eating? So you said, hey, I'm going to start to eat heavy protein diet or inflammatory diet or put these things in my diet because of what's going on right now.
In a sense, yes. And let me explain why. There are certain other diseases that are very specifically related to nutrient deficiencies. Okay, so let's just take those and put them off into a different category, because obviously, if that disease or condition is related to being deficient, you could have prevented it from happening, right? But we're going to put those off in their own category. They're a different topic. But you're talking more about, here comes a virus, or here comes, some other, even the complications of a virus. Is there something I could do now so I know if, God forbid, I'm encountering that, I would have a better chance? That's what I think you're really
Yes.
asking. Not preventing that you could encounter the virus. You can't do that.
Correct.
Not really preventing that the virus could even, you could breathe it in, or it could take hold in the system. Probably.
Giving myself the best shot.
Yes, but your best shot once if you did have a viral contact. You could, in this sense, there's something called your Nutritional Constitution. So that would be the nutritional status that you have at any given time. And in fact, myself and the dietitians that I supervise, that's really the first thing we're looking at when we meet a person is, what kind of nutritional constitution are they starting with? Is this a person who for the past 10, 20 years has been eating very healthy, has made sure they have the correct amount of protein every day, they have the correct calories, they're at a good body weight, which would be illustrative of being in a good nutritional status. They have they have carbs, protein, and the correct healthy fats. You know, a lot of those nutrients are stored over time in your body. That gives you a certain constitution. So it's not like every day you wash out what you've eaten and you put it back in the next day. You're actually storing a lot of these nutrients. So in that sense, if I were here after even 10 years of super healthy eating, and then encounter a virus, I'm going to have a better chance for that reason. Now, you might also be asking a little caveat on that, which would be, can I boost my immune system? Okay. In other words, could I better fight off this virus when I got it? That is actually a much more difficult question to answer. It sounds very simple, but it calls into question this premise. If I know that my immune system is operating very well at this level with everything about my lifestyle, can I really go higher than good? I mean, is it really possible to be better even, you know, an enhanced immune system? It's a bit of a gimmick when a lot of people are saying do this or that to enhance your immune system, because how much better than 100% can you get? You see what I'm saying? So what would be more important is that you're at an optimal level with your nutrients, and that you continue then to engage in that optimal way of eating when you are facing, for example, a virus. Now, I just want to give one little exception to that, and that is there's some good science showing that certain nutrients might bring on a little bit of a peak in, for example, your white blood count, like the natural killer cell. Okay, that's one cell that's measured in the cells that you have that are your defense cells. That's called an NK cell or a natural killer cell. And there's some evidence in the laboratory that maybe, for example, a medicinal mushroom might enhance the natural killer cell. That something like elderberry, you know, would enhance or kick up a little bit of your own production of that immune cell. Even some early research was showing that perhaps vitamin C could do that. And we have research that indicates that that is likely happening, but I wouldn't say we have definitive research that it absolutely occurs in anybody who does that. So this is where I come in with a recommendation. Usually do something like that as long as it's not harmful. And as long as you're not thinking you're banking on that to be an absolute prevention or a cure, which you said, you can never do that. But you can enhance and optimize your immune system by enhancing and optimizing your nutrient intake as much as possible.
A question to just following up the current, the news and so on forth. We hear that there's a large amount of people going to the food banks. I'm not quite sure per se what they're putting in these things. But as for an individual, what are the things then that they should be putting in it, and to make sure that there's a balanced diet going on there?
For example, in the basket or box or bag that they're giving out.
Yes, more for the recipients, so they know, you know, beggars can't be choosers. So right. For the recipients, if they go there and they receive whatever they receive, however, if they, once they open it, if there's not certain essential base stuff in it, then hopefully they have means to go get what they need to get.
That's an excellent question. It hadn't even occurred to me, and I'm really happy you asked that question, because even if you are receiving assistance, you must advocate for yourself. So like you say, you wouldn't give away or refuse to take a gift, but if you have an option in what you're pulling up or picking, or you need to look at it and say, is this adequate for my family? I need to know, you know, if what I have here is adequate. That's a very important point. So the most paramount thing that everybody needs is protein. I would hope that that bag or box would have, even if it needs to be dried beans, which are an excellent source of protein, or some canned fish, for example, which is another good source of protein. If they actually give, more perishable goods like chicken or fish or meat or eggs or any kind of dairy, that's also protein. So those are excellent sources of protein. We also have some alternative sources like quinoa, which is a grain that also is a very high and good source of protein. So that's really, really important. Maybe they might even offer some protein powders, as some of these different places I know do. Definitely you want that. So protein is paramount, not because of energy needs, but because your body uses protein to make vital components of your various functions that you have. Secondarily, you'll need starch. So you'll need to see either some rice or bread or potato or other forms of grain, even starchy vegetables like certain squashes, because that's energy. You need a certain amount of that carbohydrate or starch in order to have actual just energy, just a fuel for your body. And then the third component you would be looking for is some type of healthy fat, whether they give you a vegetable oil, which would be excellent, or some nuts, which are another excellent source of not only the healthy fat, but also some protein. That's what you're looking for. And then peek in there. I'm just really a big proponent of this for the variety, the different colors. Don't think you want all your veggies red or all your veggies green or all your veggies, to be yellow. You really want a good variety there. So
Fabulous.
those are the most important things. And that gives you what we call balance in the diet, getting all the macronutrients that you need. The least amount of the processed food, the better. So as much as you might want some crackers, cookies, Pop-Tart type of things, the least of those in your basket, the better, because they're not really giving you the nutrients you need. Cereals, though, I want to say, on the other hand, are a good option, especially if you have children, because all of our cereals are highly fortified and enriched. Enriched means that we've added back any of the vitamins and minerals that were taken out in the processing, and fortified means we've even added a little extra of certain vitamins and minerals to enhance the food. So a cereal product is actually an excellent product for your child, even if you're looking at something like instant oatmeal or the quick oats that you can make.
We leave on this note. For the layperson, the child has a terrible eating habit, or a adult, or a person who finances in a problem and they can eat as they want to eat. With a pandemic and a virus surrounding us, and on top of that, eating poorly, what's that person's status? And explain to them the danger that now that they have. So on top of the pandemic itself, as it is, not eating right, on top of it is, what the ignorance of that, if they can change it too.
Yeah. What I'd like to say is I would like to appeal to that person or to that person's parent. I'd like to appeal to them that even if you don't understand all the intricacies of the reason why it matters. I mean, I've even had professionals in medicine say, does it really matter what somebody eats? It's just food, So I understand that. Even if you don't really understand why it matters, please bank on the side or err on the side that it could, because the food you put into your system is intimately connected to your health status and your ability to fend off illnesses, to be healthy and overcome any type of illness that is taking down some of your functions, like ability to fend off a virus that produces mucus that makes it difficult to breathe, where you have high fevers, where you may not be able to eat for a few days. If someone has a really poor nutritional status, not eating well for a few days of fever could actually make them far, far worse, because they already started way down here with their nutritional status. They're already behind the 8 ball. So why not do everything you possibly can for yourself now to be as healthy as possible in case your body needs to muster up the ability to fight off the virus? That's what I would say.
Thank you so much for your knowledge base and informing us. To all you out there, thank you for joining us for another episode Time to talk, tea time. You're most welcome. See you on the next episode. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye-bye.